Welcome back. In our documentary Warehouse, The Life and Death of Tristan Murphy, we revealed how the state has failed to properly treat people with mental illnesses who end up in the criminal justice system. Tristan was sent to a prison on a littering charge. That's right, a littering charge. And after failing to treat his well-documented schizophrenia, prison officials placed him on a work detail and handed him a chainsaw. He revved it up and tried to cut off his own head. His mother, Cindy, has been fighting to make changes so that what happened to Tristan doesn't ever happen again. This week, State Senator Jennifer Bradley introduced Senate Bill 168, the Tristan Murphy Act, which will offer treatment rather than prison for people like Tristan. And Senate President Ben Albritton has made passing this bill one of his top priorities. After the bill was introduced, I spoke to Senator Bradley and asked her what she was hoping to accomplish with this piece of legislation.
I'm hoping it brings some comfort to families who have loved ones with mental illness, who worry every day that their loved one is going to have an interaction with the criminal justice system that brings them into the deep end of the system. What this bill does is it provides some off-ramps, it provides treatment, it provides better training and funding in communities through the state, similar to what Judge Leifman has done in Miami that's proven to be very successful. And the hope is that we provide some options and alternatives in the system to avoid the tragedy that Tristan Murphy experienced from happening to other families.
You mentioned earlier the sheriffs, and I think that's an important point to bring up. I was very hard on Sheriff Prumel in the documentary I did, but I think my understanding is he took it to heart himself and really sort of went after examining what happened and how things can improve. And in reality, we put sheriffs in a terrible situation because we end up asking them to house people in jails who shouldn't be really housed in jails. They're not equipped to really provide the mental health counseling that's needed. So from a law enforcement standpoint, you know, this is a bill that they want. At least the impression I get is that they want to try to tackle this issue, the sheriffs across the state.
Law enforcement is absolutely in support of this bill, and I think you stated it perfectly. Law enforcement is not equipped to deal with severe mental illness, and neither is our correction system. Our state corrections, our prison system is the third largest in the country. They're the largest provider of mental health in the state, and they are not equipped to do that. And so I think offering tools to law enforcement and making sure there's resources in the community is something that law enforcement would welcome.
I think the best way to describe what the goal here is that if there is someone with a mental health issue, before they get too far down the line in the criminal justice system, that we find a diversion. I remember interviewing the judge who ended up sentencing Tristan Murphy to prison for the charge that he ended up killing himself. And that judge had said, and it always stuck with me, he wished he had more tools available to him to be able to tackle issues like this. Will this give him more tools?
Absolutely. It'll create a model diversion plan for both misdemeanors and felonies so that when someone is booked into the jail, they are evaluated. If they need involuntary commitment, there's a path for that. But it also allows them to recover their competency on an outpatient basis using community resources. And that will do two things. One, it will allow them to get those services they need immediately. And it will also hold those forensic beds that there is a long wait list for the ones who need it the absolute most. So it will provide off-ramps as well as hopefully streamline the system so that everyone gets their services faster.
I think that was one of the interesting things that came out from your hearing that you held in the last session was there is currently a law on the books in the state of Florida that says once a person is found incompetent to proceed, they must be transferred to a treatment facility within 15 days. However, what we learned is, and it wasn't just in Tristan Murphy's case where it went on for hundreds of days, but many people are facing that same situation because the Department of Children and Families, which oversees the placement on those beds, doesn't have enough resources. So your hope is to shift them into more community rather than those more extreme hospital beds that DCF runs?
There's a shortage of forensic beds. And so when people come in and it's determined that they can recover their competency on an outpatient basis by connecting them and giving them a plan that they must follow in the community, that will allow two populations to be served and hopefully keep those beds for the ones that need it the most.
I think another aspect from what I read in the bill, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that so often we found that when people go through a diversion program or a judge sentences someone, that there is no follow-up afterwards, that the person then isn't required really to maintain their meds or see outside treatment on an ongoing basis. Does this address some of that now going forward?
Yeah, it incorporates the mental health treatment plans into the terms of their probation, links them up with community services, and make sure that there's follow through after they are diverted to make sure that they continue to receive the services they need and don't just cycle back through the system again.
I realize the funding isn't part of this bill, but do you see that as being something that the legislature will tackle as well, so the funding is there to treat people that need treatment?
Sure, and I think that there is grant money there provided for extra training so that they're able to be screened for 911 and EMT so that they know what services to connect someone with quicker and in the right way. It takes rural counties and fiscally constrained counties that often have a matching component to the funds that they're given, and oftentimes they don't have those funds. So this provides that fiscally constrained counties do not have to provide a match. And so, of course, we have standards we have to have strong standards in making sure people are getting high quality care. But access continues to be an issue in having enough providers in the communities throughout the state. Some parts of the state have the providers, other parts of the state, we really need to incentivize and build those support systems.
You mentioned Cindy Murphy. Talk to me a little bit about what you think, how she's comported herself during this time, and the fact that she's made the trips to Tallahassee and has spoken out to try to do this. Give me your sense of the role that Cindy Murphy has played in helping move this along.
Yeah, and I talked to Cindy today and told her again how incredibly impressed I was with the bravery of her family after having endured the grief and the tragedy that they did, for stepping up, engaging with you the way they did on the documentary, sharing their pain, sharing their story, because it really highlights in a very human way the way our system is not built to deal with those who have mental illness. And she is just an incredible inspiration, I'm sure, for many families across the state, and for me, for being so willing and open to share their pain and grief, to try to make the other families make sure that they don't have to ever go down the road that she did.
The first hearing for the bill is next week. We'll keep you posted on what happens. We'll be right back.